Hi guys, this is the first video about the head module, and in the head module what I mean by that, it's a combination of the skull, the jaw and the neck structure. For this video we're gonna analyze a little bit the same way we have done with the spine. That's why I referenced it in and I shaded the geometry so it's a little bit more there is consistency with the shading. So the neck area, we're going to try to analyze a little bit where the most of the flexibility happens, and as we saw last time, we need to identify where is the change of curvature in the structure, and that's usually suggests where the flexibility happens. In this case, this area here is the one where it happens more, where the neck rotation happens the most and the neck is more flexible. So, and the reason is there is a change of curvature here and the skeleton needs to adapt to, revolve around that. So that's where most of the flexibility can be. So when it comes to the skull, the skull, it's a rigid portion, of course, and the jaw, it's another rigid portion that moves. But we're going to talk about the movement of the jaw in a minute because it's a little bit more, advanced than what you may think, or you may already know it. But the jaw, it's a specific case. So in terms of the structure goes from the base, from the neck, and to the skull, to the jaw. The first thing I want to mention is the pivoting. So the pivoting, of course, there is a base of the neck. You need to identify the base of the neck. And then you need to identify the pivoting of the skull. So too many times I've seen rigs that have an incorrect position for the head, and usually it's something that intuitively people put like between the jaw. If you trace a line roughly at this height here, but the problem with that is that you end up having a rotation that does not look realistic, and the effect that you get is some kind of floating head that is floating without a structure underneath. So always keep in mind, and as a suggestion already, always try to fall back to anatomy because it will give you better results in the end. The pivot for the skull, actually this is the cranium, it's roughly at the base of at the end of the neck, and the head rotates roughly with that pivot, having not exactly here, as a little bit backwards. Of course it depends from the style of your character, and I'm saying I'm trying to find a rule of thumb here, and that's why I always fall back to anatomy. So this is roughly where the head pivots around. When it comes to the way we want to animate the head, usually it's very similar to the spine actually. And the analogy, if you think that the spine has a structure that flexes and then there is a big mass that moves almost rigidly, well, in this case, the cranium is that mass, meaning that you can animate, you want to be able to animate the neck by positioning the head, and you want the neck to follow exactly like the spine, and then you want to be able to have the neck being able to animate the neck in a FK kind of manner. So you can see that if the cranium moves rigidly, it will be our rib cage in our setup, the setup that we saw in Unreal. So these are just observation. We're not going to do anything again in Unreal today, but this is what we're going to try to implement. So the good news is that most of this work we already done it when we developed the spine, because most of the functionality is already there. We just need to adapt and change a few things here and there in terms of naming and inputs, and a little bit more work we will have to put it on the jaw, but not that much. And the reason I'm saying not that much, it's because I'm not going to implement, I only want to discuss the range of motion of the jaw, but I don't want to implement the super photoreal one. And the reason is 95% of the time the position of the jaw will be driven by facial animation, which is very specific, and you need to be able to fine-tune. Animation needs to be able to fine-tune the jaw animation. But let's see what I mean by complex range of motion. So the structure of the skeleton is such as this portion here, this purple one, has a very interesting range of motion. You may assume that the jaw simply rotates, but it's not really like that. This structure here, this bone here, let me select, not that, let me select these vertices here. These yellow vertices, they do slide throughout this area I roughly selected now. And the way they move is not by simply rotating. These two structures are interconnected by muscles and tendons, and the contraption of these muscles and tendons allow this jaw actually rotate but also translate. Okay, so there is a push and pull, a constant push and pull of these muscles and area. So in reality, the range of motion of the jaw is not a simple rotation, although most of the time we're going to do that, and this is what we're actually going to implement. But if you want to have a very complex rig that gives absolutely one-to-one anatomically correct results, then your rig will have to take care of when the animator rotates the control, underneath the jaw actually slides back and forth by a certain degree angle depending on how your character looks. So this is some kind of observation I want to make, and I left open. I suggest you guys walk through this video. It's from Disney Research, where they're trying to represent procedurally the motion and the range of motion of the jaw, but it gives you an idea.
Minimizing the reflect on the interior,
it gives you an idea
even though it is
how complex actually this
as we
motion
constrain
is.
The point picked by the artist to lie within.
So yeah, this will be pretty much it as an observation. As we said, we're gonna bring this into Unreal and copy most of the work that we already done with the spine, and see you in Unreal.